Diffusion, the international science radio show.
We have a bouncer on the doors of perception.
The good, the bad, the ugly.
It gets pretty exciting.
The myths, the truths.
Toxicology.
Astroseismology.
Magnetism. The dark side.
Genetically engineered potatoes.
Planetoid.
I
love that word.
Hello and welcome to Diffusion. Sit back and relax while we launch your brain with weird and wonderful science. I'm Ian Wolfe. On this edition, you'll hear about missions to space and the destruction of the CSIRO. But first, billionaires in space. SpaceX irradiation. One of SpaceX's billionaires, Jared Isaacman, is going into space to test SpaceX's new spacesuit. This first mission will be one of a trilogy funded by Isaacman alongside SpaceX, called the Polaris program. The first mission is Polaris Dawn. The aim of the mission is to expose the crew to vacuum and radiation in the Van Allen belts, in spacesuits, 1,000 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. It sounds like someone likes the Fantastic Four. This will be the first spacewalk by a private space mission rather than by government astronauts. Jared Isaacman made his fortune with Shift4 Payments, a payment processor. Next, he founded Draken International, a company that trains fighter pilots for the US Air Force and operates the world's largest fleets of privately owned fighter jets. He's not a supervillain, honest. He's a qualified fighter pilot himself and has a degree in professional aeronautics. Jared Isaacman is also an experienced astronaut who first went into space with his crew in a SpaceX Dragon capsule in 2021. The 4-person crew spent 3 days orbiting the Earth to show that people from different walks of life could train for space and execute a mission, without necessarily being military test pilots. The mission was also to raise awareness and funds for St. Jude's Hospital in Tennessee, which specialises in caring for children with cancer while researching for cancer treatment and cures. The space mission raised $250 million for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. The Polaris Dawn mission will spend 5 days in space at the highest altitude since the Apollo moon missions, which takes them into the Van Allen radiation belts. The Van Allen radiation belts are 2 zones of charged particles collected by the Earth's magnetic field from the solar wind. We're fortunate that it stops these charged particles from reaching the surface of the Earth and exposing life to killingly extreme radiation. Once in the radiation belt, the corporate astronauts will open their capsule to the vacuum of space. The Dragon capsule doesn't have an airlock, so they'll do this slowly over 2 days while they wear the newly designed SpaceX extravehicular activity spacesuits. In order to cope with this gradual loss of air and pressure, the crew will purge nitrogen from their blood in the same way that deep-sea divers do, to avoid decompression sickness known as the bends. As the pressure goes down and the air leaks out, the oxygen levels the crew are breathing will slowly go up. On the 3rd day, they'll open the hatch all the way and be exposed to the radiation and vacuum. At this point, Isaacman and engineer Sarah Gillis will go outside for a spacewalk. Sarah Gillis is an aerospace engineer in charge of astronaut training at SpaceX. The 2 astronauts will be tethered by an air tube to the Dragon capsule while they spacewalk, as the SpaceX suits don't have a built-in life support system. The pilot is Kid Poteet, who's a retired US Air Force pilot. He worked with Isaacman at Draken International. Anna Menon is the crew medic and engineer who's previously worked as a biomedical engineer at NASA. SpaceX have partnered with 30 institutions around the world for a series of 40 science and research experiments in human health on the Polaris Dawn mission. In order to test how radiation-proof the electronics would be, the team tested the electronics in a cancer radiation therapy lab. When they closed the hatch and repressurized the capsule after exposing it to vacuum, many components of the space capsule would naturally vent toxic gases and vapors. To avoid this, the components had to be immersed in a high temperature vacuum chamber on Earth so that they would have already emitted all of the toxins before they left the Earth. The onboard computers have automatic rebooting software so that the system can restart without human intervention, in case of radiation upsetting the computers or an undiscovered bug or CrowdStrike updates. They exposed the spacecraft ladder to minus 90 degrees Celsius temperatures to see how cold the ladder would get when exposed to space. The spacesuits were fired at by debris moving at orbital speeds at the White Sands missile range to test how they would stand up to being hit. The second Polaris mission will continue to test humans in space and in-space communications. The third Polaris mission will be the first human flight on SpaceX's Starship, which, while not truly a starship, is billed as the world's first fully reusable spacecraft planned to carry crew and cargo to Earth orbit, the Moon, and Mars. Polaris Dawn's Dragon capsule is due to take off, if the weather is good, on August 26, 2024. Australian microsatellites. On the 17th of August 2024, 3 CubeSat mini-satellites made in Australia were launched on SpaceX's Transporter 11 mission from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. The 3 CubeSats are called Carnyini, Waratah Seed and Quava 2. CubeSats are small, cube-shaped satellites that are launched together with many other small satellites inside a big satellite, a rideshare. Carnyini is a South Australian government CubeSat, whose mission is led by the SmartSat Cooperative Research Centre. The satellite shell, or bus, was manufactured by Innovor Technologies in Adelaide. The Apogee bus provides the power system, pointing system, mission control, and telemetry systems for Carnyini, all integrated into a lightweight modular structure. The Hyperscout 2 flight module hyperspectral imager is a 3-in-1 instrument that combines hyperspectral and thermal imaging with high-level data processing and artificial intelligence capabilities. This payload will provide extremely detailed Earth observation imagery that will support research into things such as crop health, forestry, inland and coastal water management, rainfall, flooding, and bushfire detection. Myriota's Internet of Things Space Services device will provide the data transfer capability for the satellite, sending data from IoT devices and sensors on Earth's surface to the satellite. The data will be securely transferred directly to the cloud and returned to Earth so it can be used to improve delivery of emergency services and environmental monitoring. The satellite was named Carnyini in a competition won by students from Findon High School. Carnyini is a word from the Aboriginal language of the people at the Anyangu, Pitjantjatjara, Yuknjantjara lands. Carnyini means responsibility and unconditional love for all of creation. The Waratah Seed CubeSat is funded by the New South Wales government. It carries the submillimetre particle detection system. This was designed at the School of Physics at the University of Sydney and with multiple students from the Inventing the Future course. The primary purpose of the submillimetre particle detection system is to detect the impact of submillimetre particles on a satellite's body from debris. A secondary goal is to measure waves in Earth's ionospheric plasma and to measure their ionospheric density and temperature. To accomplish these goals, the instrument continuously measures the electric field spectrum around the satellite using a dipole antenna connected to a custom-built printed circuit board for signal amplification and processing. The Matilda payload will demonstrate a new method of heat management. Larger and more powerful computers generate more heat, which is hard to manage in the vacuum of space. Matilda will demonstrate a novel thermal management technique using a 3D printed structure developed by the University of Technology Sydney with an integrated phase change material. During the flight, the payload will use a heater to simulate the heat output of a computer chip, which will melt the internal phase change material. The team will then compare the resulting thermal data between the flight system and the thermal vacuum tests that were performed on the ground. Mawson rovers developed the payload electronics and software. To help future space efforts in Australia, Mawson Rovers has also made the electronics designs and software source code for the payload available as an open source project on GitHub. The third microsatellite is Quava 2, the successor to Quava 1. The Quava 2 satellite incorporates a hyperspectral imager for applications in agriculture, forestry, coastal and marine environments, urban areas, water hazard assessment, and mineral exploration. A GPS reflectometry payload will be used to measure GPS signals scattered off the sea to remotely determine the state of the sea, as well as direct signals from GPS satellites for position, navigation and timing. The two GPS modules are attached to an interface board controlled by a Raspberry Pi Compute Module 4. This interface board controls both receivers and provides temporary data storage before transfer to the bus and power to the receivers. Quava 2 carries the Electro-Permanent Magnetorquer, designed by a team at the School of Aerospace, Mechanical and Mechatronic Engineering at the University of Sydney. A magnetic torquer is a satellite system for attitude control, detumbling and stabilisation, traditionally built from electromagnetic coils. The Electro-Permanent Magnetorquer uses hard, permanent magnetic materials at the core. This flight is a demonstration of the new satellite control technology. The cross payload for Quava 2 is designed to demonstrate a wide field of view star tracker to determine the altitude of the satellite accurately, using known bright star references. The optical component is an infrared camera with a wide-angle lens, with computing from a commercial Pocket Beagle single-board computer. The final payload is a solar cell research module called the Perovskites in Orbit Readiness Test. It was designed by Euroka Power and the University of Sydney Space Solar Cell Research Team. The module is designed to further demonstrate the capabilities of new perovskite solar cell designs in extraterrestrial environments. This mission will pave the way for high-performance space-grade solar cells. The solar cells will be scanned every 30 seconds, generating about 20 kilobytes of data for all 8 cells during each scan, which is equal to about 2.4 megabytes per hour. By closely monitoring the performance of the solar cells and collecting their data, they hope to better understand their behaviour and make improvements as necessary. The ARC Industrial Transformation Training Centre for CubeSats, UAVs and their applications, Quava, is responsible for both Waratah Seed and Quava 2 microsatellites. The National Space Mission for Earth Observation project for our first 4 full-size observation satellites was announced in the final budget of the outgoing Morrison government. Under the program announced just weeks before the 2022 election, they envisaged that 4 satellites would be launched between 2028 and 2033 to assist with Australian access to global Earth observation data. We would finally have our own satellites. Sadly, the current Labor government killed the project in 2023 to save money in the budget. This means Australia has no full-size satellites and no plans to launch any. We currently buy time on the satellites owned by Japan and the US for everything. While Australia can't launch our own satellites just yet, and our only satellites are little tiny CubeSats, it's great to see some space activity from Australia happening again.
You're listening to Ian Wolfe on Diffusion Science Radio. Send emails to science.diffusionradio.com. We're brought to you across Australia on the Community Radio Network and podcast over the internet on diffusionradio.com. Oh, science and wonder, they go hand in hand, unlocking mysteries in this great big land. From galaxies and stars to the depths of the sea, science keeps revealing what's possible to be.
And finally, save the CSIRO. The Commonwealth Scientific Industrial Research Organisation, CSIRO, is funded by the Australian Federal Government to solve Australia's national problems using innovative science and technology. In Australia, there are few companies doing scientific research. Most scientists work for either the CSIRO or universities. The CSIRO Staff Association wrote to the Federal Industry and Science Minister Ed Husic in the first week of August, telling him that the National Science Agency is under attack from within. The letter said, CSIRO's core purpose and the ability of its staff to deliver world-class research are being undermined by significant restructuring and associated job losses. The job losses are coming from restructuring designed to cut costs of enterprise support services by 25% by 2025 to 2026 to try and save $100 million. According to the CSIRO's latest annual report, there were 1,990 staff in enterprise support services, which means that at least 500 jobs would be axed. Staff at the CSIRO say they expect about 700 jobs will be lost across the organisation, and that's just the beginning. The letter says these cuts are widespread and reckless, jeopardising vital research, national capabilities in areas such as health, biosecurity, climate change and data sciences, including artificial intelligence. Public sector science must be funded as a vital part of a successful Australia, especially in times of economic rebuilding and changing climate. We must protect the CSIRO so it continue to be world-leading, trusted, robust and brave. The cuts announced so far have included more than 400 jobs from enterprise services, 43 from health and biosecurity, human health, 30 from agriculture and food, 5 from manufacturing and 120 from Data 61. It's also rumoured that another 65 jobs in environmental science could be lost. The public sector union, the CPSU, said that CSIRO Chief Executive Officer Doug Hilton has repeatedly refused to listen to staff concerns and that employee confidence in the strategic direction of the CSIRO is collapsing. The large-scale restructuring is hitting core scientific research, ending long-term projects and shrinking science support roles. The cuts to health and biosecurity human health are in their final stages, and as a result, CSIRO is set to exit clinical trial research, leading to the closure of the clinical trial unit based at Sydney's Westmead Hospital and the complete removal of the organisation's presence at the South Australian Health and Medical Research Institute in Adelaide. Without clinical trials, there's no new vaccines, treatments or cures. Further research into the development of high amylose wheat, which improves digestive health and provides protection against bowel cancer and type 2 diabetes, will end, as well as allergy research such as the Omnis Ova program, which produces new generation allergen-free egg white products for families. A recent Staff Association Snap poll showed a plummeting morale throughout the entire CSIRO and concerns over Australia's ongoing research capability. CSIRO Section Secretary Susan Tonks said the gutting of CSIRO flies in the face of the federal government's Future Made in Australia policy. She said, "It isn't clear to me or the hundreds of CSIRO staff who are losing or have already lost their jobs how these cuts will benefit our country in tackling the big issues that are ahead of us. The CSIRO is a national treasure. It's home to world-leading science and innovation, and it needs to be protected, not gutted." The current Australian government, like the previous Australian government, promises a lot of respect and support for scientific and technological research in Australia. But they fail to deliver on those promises every time, preferring to save money for more vote-catching spending. Maybe a new football oval, maybe a new car park. Maybe nuclear submarines that no one wants or needs. The CSIRO is very important to Australians and to our future. The attack from within must stop.
Government cuts, it's a joke. Find the scientist broke. Research like now we're luck. CSIRO's out of bucks. Too many scientists fired me. Now our future's hanging fate. No more breakthroughs we can claim. Who's to blame? It's such a shame. Who's to blame? It's such a shame. The labs are empty halls. Echoes fill the science calls. What's the reason? Who can tell? Makes science a living hell. Stuck in the outback's heat. No research now, just defeat. Smart minds leave this place. Governing lost in space. Crazy world we now must face. All because of budget race. In a land known for its brains. Now we're riding silly trains. Too many scientists fired me. Now our future's hanging fate. No more breakthroughs we can claim. Who's to blame? It's such a shame. Blame, it's such a shame. Who's to blame? It's such a shame. Too many scientists fired me. Now our future's hanging fate. No more breakthroughs we can claim. Who's to blame? It's such a shame. The labs are empty halls. Echoes fill the science calls. What's the reason? Who can tell? Makes science a living hell. Stuck in the outback's heat. No research now, just defeat. Smart minds leave this place. Governing lost in space. Crazy world we now must face. All because of budget race. In a land known for its brains. Now we're riding silly trains.
From the laboratories of Your Name Here had come the key to the secret that had baffled man through the ages. No longer a dream, but a reality was Your Product Here. A brighter future unfolded, thanks to Your Name Here. Geared to supply this vital new industry that is reshaping our economy and transforming the lives of millions.
The scientists go, mate, where'd they disappear? Government said budget's tight, science out of here. Projects left unfinished, specimens on ice. All 'cause of the budget cuts, wasn't very nice. Hey CSIRO, where did all the brains go? Funds got a big no, now the labs are all alone. Kangaroos in chaos, no one studies trees. Who will save the platypus? Do we cut their feet? Meteorologists in tears. Climate studies tossed. Research grants are disappearing at a painful cost. Hey CSIRO, where did all the brains go? Funds got a big no, now the labs are all alone. No one studies trees. Who will save the platypus? Do we cut their fees? Meteorologists in tears. Climate studies tossed. Research grants are disappearing at a painful cost. Hey CSIRO, where did all the brains go? Funds got a big no, now the labs are all alone.
And that's all from us this week on Diffusion. Are you a scientist, artist, biohacker or maker who'd like to be interviewed about your work? Send your contributions, opinions, helpful suggestions and donations to science@diffusionradio.com. That's science@diffusionradio.com. Please rate the show on iTunes and Spotify. Tell your friends. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter and Mastodon.
at Ian Wolfe. The news music was Rhinos Theme by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. I produce Diffusion, which is broadcast around Australia to 28 stations on the Community Radio Network, including Tune FM at the University of Armidale in New South Wales, 2MVR in Nambucca Valley, 3MBR in the Mallee Border districts of Victoria and South Australia, 4DDD in Dalby and the Darling Downs in Queensland, 4RPH in Brisbane, Denmark FM in Western Australia, 6GME in Galari in Broome, Radio Adelaide in South Australia, Lofty FM in the Adelaide Hills, 2XX FM in Canberra, City Park Radio 7LTN in Launceston, Tasmania, and Print Radio in Hobart. Diffusion is narrowcast on Indigo FM 88 in Northeast Victoria. Subscribe to the podcast on the Diffusion website, www.diffusionradio.com. That's www.diffusionradio.com, and check the website for links, photos and videos about this week's show. If you enjoyed this show, you can explore more than 1,300 previous episodes archived on diffusionradio.com, where the shows are labelled by keywords, so you can focus in on the stories you want to hear. Join my patrons at patreon.com/diffusionradio. Make a donation through paypal.me/Ian Wolfe. You can also support Diffusion by buying from the Diffusion Science Etsy store. I'm Ian Wolfe. Join us inside your audio device of choice for more science wondering next week on Diffusion Science Radio.
Science is fun. It helps you to learn, to know, and to appreciate. When you study science, you may go on field trips. You discover the marvelous interrelationships between all living things. You learn to read the history of the Earth as it is written in rocks and fossils. You find out what makes things tick. Everything from a molecule to a living organism. In the study of science is found the most useful and satisfying knowledge of man. Knowledge of his physical world, its past, its present, and its future. And in your moments of relaxation, now and in the years to come, you will find the study of science leading you into fascinating pursuits. Photography, collecting. Why study science? Study science because you will find in the study of science a richer, more rewarding life.